He won. Won what? Jonathan Majors the case. Shout out him.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. A lot of you have been asking me if Jonathan Majors is coming back to Marvel as Kang in light of the recent news. Recently, it was reported that his former girlfriend, the person who was the reason he got fired from Marvel in the first place, dropped her lawsuit against him, and in court last year, he beat most of the charges they tried to throw at him. So it almost seemed like it was a bit of a Johnny Depp kind of situation. But despite all that, Marvel still isn't going to bring him back, and it kind of feels like they're doing him a little dirty for a couple of different reasons, so we'll break it all down. Because they have changed a lot of their overarching plans for the movies the past few years, and it wasn't entirely because Jonathan Majors got in trouble and they fired him, but that was a big part of it. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. If you didn't see the news, recently Jonathan Majors was still being sued by that same woman who took him to court last year that resulted in him being fired by Marvel and all his other non-Marvel projects either getting canceled, he got fired from, or they just got shelved outright. It basically put a full stop on his career
was doing a good job,
until the trial was over, just like what happened with Johnny Depp. He wound up beating most of the stuff they threw at him last year. Not everything. He was still given an assault charge because of what happened in the video of him with that woman. I'm not going to repost the video here, but essentially the vibe was she was kind of going after him and he was defending himself, and she got hurt as a result of that. This is what he looks like in real life.
Bullshit.
He is jacked. Ant-Man has nothing on Kang. They definitely did him dirty during that movie. He should have wasted Ant-Man. And the woman is tiny by comparison. Just the sheer act of him swatting her away, being pissed off, was enough to hurt her, and that's what he got in trouble for. All the other stuff, like the really bad stuff they tried to throw at him, he beat that. That was why people were making all the Johnny Depp comparisons. While that was going down last year, Marvel fires him under suspicion. Like before the sentencing had been carried out, they fired him. His other movie
Marvel
projects
don't
go
play.
away. But then right after the trial, after he was sentenced to counseling, which is common in cases like that, instead of it being totally over for him after that, the same woman tried to sue him again for defamation because during the trial, if you follow any of the drama, what was going on, she kind of came off in the defense as a very unstable person, which Jonathan Majors' lawyers pointed out at several points in very public ways. She herself did a lot of erratic things when it was all going down, so it kind of felt like he was being sued for all that after the fact. But that woman just dropped all of that, so currently Jonathan Majors is free and clear, and it kind of turned, like I said, into a very Johnny Depp kind of situation, where basically Disney and all these other companies that didn't want to work with him before all suddenly seem like they're back in the Johnny Depp business. So naturally, a lot of people were like, oh, is this going to happen to Jonathan Majors now? Like, is all of his stuff going to come back? Will Marvel bring him back as a version of Kang because they brought James Gunn back to do Guardians of the Galaxy 3 a couple years after they fired him for all those absolutely unhinged tweets?
He did a really
Marvel
good job
built
with
their
Kang.
entire business model on Robert Downey Jr., who's been one of the most famous Hollywood comeback stories in history, going from prison to one of the most award-winning, highest-earning, most respected actors in present day. In fact, a big part of them bringing him back was also to help save the Marvel brand. But according to reports from Marvel right now, they're not going to bring Jonathan Majors back as Kang for Avengers 5.
I highly doubt it.
They've completely swerved on their overarching plans for the Council of Kangs, and they very famously just turned Avengers 5 into Doomsday, replacing him with Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. It has been a full-on pivot for Marvel the past year. To post all the memes, Marvel turned the ship, and they turned it quickly.
Pivot!
There is a plan to bring a version of Kang back in the distant future. I'll explain that in a second. It's not Jonathan Majors' version of Kang, it's like another version, but currently there's barely any mention of the Council of Kangs at all, or any version of Kang for that matter, in Avengers 5 Doomsday. I would not be surprised if they barely get a name drop. Most of us are expecting that when Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom shows up in the MCU, that movie starts fighting everyone, he has already wasted the entire Council of Kangs like Thanos at the beginning of Avengers Infinity War with the Nova Corps.
That would be badass.
You remember in the opening 10 minutes of that movie, we saw him wasting all the Asgardians in Loki, R.I.P., to get the Mind Stone. But before that, there was like a whole deleted scene where he had already wasted the Nova Corps to get the Power Stone, and they just never showed you it happening. Would not be surprised if that's what they do with the Council of Kangs and all the other Kangs. Like, what? Oh, they're all dead. He killed them before he ever showed up here.
Bro, imagine.
Rebranded.
So the follow-up question I know a lot of you are asking is if Marvel isn't going to start filming Avengers 5 Doomsday until March next year in 2025. Like, there's still a little ways to go.
Yeah,
Jonathan
figure out the
Majors is
script.
free and clear right now and largely vindicated. Why wouldn't they just bring him back as Kang let him be in the movie? There are a couple reasons why Marvel isn't bringing him back. A couple of them seem kind of sus too. First is the nature of what he was accused of. Forget about what actually happened, like whether or not he actually did anything. Disney is terrified of even being associated with that kind of violence, like violence against women. They view themselves as a family brand. So if anybody gets in trouble for anything really serious like that, even if they're acquitted later,
they
they
don't
are
even
way
play
more
that
likely
at
to
all.
just completely forget about whoever that actor was that they were working with. If he'd been arrested for drug use or shoplifting or dangerous driving, he would be back in a heartbeat. And the other part of that is the amount of time that's passed since it all went down. It's just too soon for them to get back into business with him. For instance, all that Johnny Depp stuff went down, and then suddenly it seemed like Disney and everybody else were getting back into bed with him to do more movies with him. But has that actually happened? Not really, no. Like, there was talk about him coming back to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but have you seen any of those movies in the couple years since his trial went down? No. The Marvel ship moves way, way faster, releasing way more movies. Another good example of this phenomenon is James Gunn. He was fired in 2018. They didn't ultimately start making Guardians of the Galaxy, rehiring him until 2021 and releasing it till 2022. So Disney didn't really need to deal with any of that stuff for about 4 years when James Gunn started going back in front of cameras to actually promote the movie. All the Jonathan Majors stuff just went down last year. Like, all the Avengers 5 stuff will be rolling out way faster than that. But there is a chance that Marvel brings him back as part of a different Kang storyline in the distant future, but that would be long after Secret Wars is done and gone, and we've moved on to Marvel Phase 7, the Mutant Saga, which Kevin Feige was just hyping up at his big D23 presentation, saying that Secret Wars would
hopefully they don't mess it up, bro.
In that next saga,
and Magneto,
saga,
we finally get Magneto.
Way more X-Men based movies inside the MCU. Here's where we get to the other part of this too, like the other side. I think the other big reason Marvel is not bringing Jonathan Majors back as Kang is also because they plan to completely swerve on Kang as a character just in general, like totally sideline any of that story, and they're using what happened with him last year in his big trial to justify that behind the scenes. Even if he hadn't gotten in trouble, there wouldn't have been a trial, Marvel would have found another reason to try and not bring Jonathan Majors back as Kang during Avengers 5.
What the hell?
And now they're just using all the trial stuff as an excuse to just completely push that off into a corner and never think about it again. And really what's happened is they've completely lost confidence in the audience, and they don't think a Kang-based movie like Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty was going to be enough to win audiences back to Marvel after the slump they've been in the past few years. Everybody remembering all the Deadpool multiverse jokes, like, can we just be done with the multiverse saga?
Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point.
Deadpool and Wolverine was a solid step in the right direction. Like, it was a banger of a movie, but Marvel needs to keep releasing bangers only through Secret Wars. Like, Marvel's new motto should be bangers only. That is why they put Captain America 4, Brave New World through 4 rounds of reshoots, driving the cost of the movie up, so that Captain America 4 is probably going to wind up being one of the most expensive movies that they've ever made. They are so worried about releasing the best possible movies, they do not care how much that costs to turn Captain America 4 into a good movie. Like, whatever it takes, just make it good. If you didn't watch my big Jonathan Majors video last year, right after Marvel fired him, when it all went down, after Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania underperformed at the box office, Marvel got terrified behind the scenes that general audiences that they depend on to buy tickets for their movies, like we're talking like big families all buying tickets for all their kids too, just did not care about Kang as a character or as a concept. That's part of the reason why Deadpool clowned on him in this deleted scene.
But your universe is not the only one in existence.
Oh, please, you think I haven't seen Dr. Ant and the Quantum Burst of Madness?
Keep in mind that Marvel didn't go into Marvel Phase 4 right after Endgame knowing that Kang was going to be their big overarching villain. It was only after he blew up during Loki Season 1 and became super popular that they then pivoted to Kang. Cut to Quantumania coming out, they had that whole post-credit scene with the Council of Kangs, and it just felt like
he played his role
enough about all of
it's
that.
Not his fault.
They wanted a stronger, more compelling hook to get casual audiences back to theaters
they didn't do a good
to
movie.
see Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. And I talked about this last year, but behind the scenes at their big Marvel retreat that year, a little while after Quantumania came out, where they planned like the next 5 years worth of movies with Kevin Feige, the big producers, the powers that be, they discussed pivoting to Doctor Doom as the main villain instead of Kang because he's been such a popular comic book character, whereas Kang has not been nearly as popular in the comics. Robert Downey Jr. then
You can make
revealed
him big though,
recently that
like the
around that
Guardians
same
of the
time, we're
Galaxy.
talking 2023 now, Kevin Feige came to him, begged him to come back as Doctor Doom, which he was not expecting, but at the time in 2023, he was working with Disney separately, Bob Iger, about doing some theme park stuff for a new Iron Man attraction they were building called Stark Lab. So he said yes to coming back as Doctor Doom because Disney backed up more dump trucks
Oh
of money,
yeah,
like more
he
money
got
than you'll ever be able to
paid.
spend in your entire life. He's going to get paid $80 million
Good for him, though.
for each
He deserved
of
it.
the next Avengers movies. That's $160 million total.
That's
So
crazy.
even though Jonathan Majors seems like he's fine to come back, by the time those movies are actually released, Avengers 5, Avengers 6, there won't be any big stink on him or anything like that. It's largely because Marvel feels like it has such a strong hit with Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr., and the Russos coming back that it doesn't need any extra juice that it would potentially
They just need to
get from
keep the
all this
Russos.
Council of
I don't know
Kang
why
storyline, all
they
the
got rid
Kang
of them
stuff.
or whatever happened.
Remember the scene in Deadpool and Wolverine where he tried to join the Avengers before Infinity War happened and Happy Hogan very politely tells him no, but maybe someday? There were like 4 different jokes that Ryan Reynolds was making at the same time during that scene. It got super meta, but one of those jokes, like one part of it, was that during Avengers Infinity War and Endgame in real life, Marvel was at the peak of its popularity, and they were saying kind of in this scene that they didn't need Deadpool as a character even though he's so popular. Ryan Reynolds was basically clowning Marvel by having them clown the Deadpool character, saying that he was not important enough, essentially, to be on the Avengers. The other part of
He
that
would
joke
cook on
is that
the
we cut to a
Avengers.
couple years later, and Marvel definitely needs the Deadpool character. Like, it depended on Deadpool
Yeah.
and Wolverine to be a banger to get people excited about Marvel movies
Bro,
in
if
general
that
again.
didn't hit,
And if you
it
haven't
would have
seen
been
the box
GG's for
office
Marvel.
receipts, Deadpool and Wolverine is now like the 7th highest earning comic book movie of any kind from any company in history.
$1
It
billion
almost earned more
movie.
than the first Black Panther movie. The only other higher earning comic book movies are the Avengers movies and the recent Spider-Man movies. So the real joke is that Marvel needs Deadpool and Wolverine now more than ever. He even just joked about saving the studio
That's
from
why they're going
bankruptcy.
back to meeting.
See, right now, Marvel is moving to bet all their chips on the safest possible bets, most reliable hits they possibly can. So that's why they're going with Robert Downey Jr., Doctor Doom, the Russos, because they're very proven hits, also bringing back Deadpool and Wolverine as much as possible. Whereas
Yeah,
here,
you
they're not
gotta
really
use
showing any
them
confidence in
now
Kang
that
as
you
a big
can.
box office earner for them. But here's the way that Jonathan Majors can come back in a more distant future storyline. So
You
in
coulda
several
made
years,
him big,
Marvel
though.
will release their Young Avengers project. That's going to be a TV show, not a movie, if it wasn't clear. They're currently calling it Champions, based more on the comic book Champions, to avoid feeling like a ripoff of the Avengers movies. That's why they won't use the Young Avengers title. If you haven't
Yes.
read the comics, half of the characters that are going to be on the team from the MCU were Young Avengers. The other half are from the Champions team, thus the Champions name. During that, they're going to be doing a version of the Young Avengers Children's Crusade storyline, and there's been talk
Yes,
of doing
sir.
the Iron Lad part of that story with
Scarlet
young
Witch
Kang.
with Doctor Doom, I
Children's
think.
Crusade is basically the larger story about Billy and Tommy reuniting with their mother, Scarlet Witch. But there's a lot of other Avengers-related stuff going on during that, a lot of Kang-related Iron Lad stuff too. That's not supposed to happen till after Secret Wars, so we're talking several years in the future, but they can do that just a straight rip from the comics where Iron Lad is revealed to be a young Kang variant who decides he doesn't want to become evil like his future selves and they rebel against him, and they can just bring Jonathan Majors back as the older version of Kang that's trying to control his younger self. One of the other big pieces of evidence that Marvel is swerving on Kang right now with Avengers 5 is the end of Loki Season 2. They ended that in a way that allowed them an out, so they had a way to explain why Kang and the Council of Kangs were not a threat anymore. Basically, the TVA had started targeting Kang variants, and the Time Variance Authority basically turned into the Kang Variance Authority. So let me know in the comments. They wait to bring
Just
back
prune
Kang
all
to
of
the
them.
Young Avengers Champions storyline in the distant future. Do you want to see Jonathan Majors come back as the older Kang, or would you just rather they recast the
sir.
character completely?
Nah.
It is a real bummer what happened to him. It does
I
kind
like
of feel like
Jonathan
Marvel
Majors
and Disney
as
did
Kang,
him
bro.
dirty just a little bit.
He
Like
was
if they
good.
waited a little bit longer, things probably would have been okay. whatever winds up happening with Avengers 5, with the Kang character, of course I will do videos about that. But there's a bunch of big stuff coming up this week. My Dune Prophecy Episode 2 video will post tomorrow. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Click here for that big Black Panther 3 announcement, and click here for that Deadpool Christmas special.
Let me know what y'all thought about the video, and please like and subscribe.